Hi, this is Mark Reagan of Christ Church. This is a video in our series of videos on how to read musical notation. We'll talk about a few additional things that you'd like to know in order to understand musical notation and master how to read it. Now, these are the things I'm going to cover, but right now I'm not revealing exactly what they are. They might sound a little bit abstract to start with. In this video, we'll talk about life beyond the staff. Does the staff do everything for us that we needed to do? Well, the answer to that question is actually no. We need additional things to allow us to understand how pitch is notated. Also, we'll discuss the continuum between high and low. High and low do not, in fact, occupy very separate realms, but they overlap. So there's a continuum between high and low and high. That probably begs the question then, where do high and low meet or overlap when we see music on the page? So here on the screen, we have a familiar hymn tune notated, and I notated it just for the sake of example in the bass clef. And can it be that I should gain, etc. It's a tune that's familiar to many Christians. I notated in the bass clef, and as we're going along, we're going to notice just some things about the notation. Let me review a couple things before we get into that. So on the left side, we have the bass clef. The bass clef, and I'll add my dots here, I forgot those. So the bass clef claim all the pitches for the lower voices. So if you're a tenor or a bass, this would be for you. This is where you read your notes. So we have the bass clef, low voices, then we have our key signature, and then we use our silly little phrase that we use for this to find out the do, la, or name of the key. The last flat is fa, and the last sharp is T. And here we have a sharp, right? It looks like a hashtag or a number sign. That's our T. It's the only sharp that we have, so it is therefore the last sharp. So this is our T. If we want to claim it as such, that's T. Next we have our time signature, which just tells us that we have 4 quarter notes in a group, in a measure, or in our meter, if you want to put it that way. So 4 quarter notes together in our time signature, and then the music starts after that. So because our last sharp is T, the line on the staff passes right through this sharp, if you can see that, all right through the middle of the sharp. And so this pitch here is our do. Let's put a D there to show that it's not the note D, it's actually a G, but this is our do right here. So if we were following this along, and I'll just do this quickly, we'd be going like this. Do, do, re, mi, sol, fa, la, ti, re, do, to do it quickly. All right, that's something you can work through slowly on your own if you like. As we're climbing, do, do, re, mi, sol. So this one, sol, and then fa is after it, right? So we skip between mi and sol. So we skip over the fa when we come back to it. Mi, sol, fa. So fa is the pitch that's between mi and sol. We skip over and come back to it. So we sort of close the gap that we created between the two notes. But we notice here that we actually run out of staff. So we're starting at the top of the staff, space, space, line, and that one is on the staff. It's actually resting right above the staff. Then we have this note that seems to be just flying away, right? And then this one as well, right? So here, what we see is that the staff can be extended, in this case upwards, and we can put these funny little lines in place of staff lines to, in effect, extend the staff here going upwards. So we call these lines, we call them ledger lines. Ledger lines. You could think of them as a ledger line is like a scrap of staff that's placed above or below the staff in order to extend it one way or another. Now, if we take the same melody And I just put a portion of it here in the bass clef again. We could take the same melody. I'm a tenor, so I'm singing this in tenor range. Do, do, re, mi, or and can it be that I, etc. All right, I'm singing this in tenor range in the bass clef. Is it possible then to take the same range of notes, tenor range of notes, and then write them in a different staff? It is, and by doing that, we're going to invoke some ledger lines. So here, I'm going to show this same do down here. I'll do this quickly and as neatly as I can. Just a little messy, but here what I've done is then I've taken the same melody and I've transferred it to the other clef while keeping the same range, right? So if I'm saying this is in tenor range, this is also in tenor range, but I'm not using the tenor clef or the clef that tenors usually use, which is the bass clef. I'm not using that clef. I'm using the treble clef to show tenor range. So we notice that the basic contour is the same. We have same pitch, do, do, re, mi. So we have same pitch, up a step, up a step. Same pitch, up a step, up a step. This one skips a note, we call it a third. So it skips up a third, this one skips up a third, down a second, or down a step, down a step. If you want, you can think of it this way. These are unison, they're the same, we call it one. This is up a step, we call that a two. This is up a second, again a two, skipping a note, up a third, and then down a second again. All right, well, what's the difference? Well, there's no difference. They're actually the same thing. But in terms of appearance, I'd rather sing this one than I'd sing that one because look how far off the staff we are, right? So we're actually having to use more ledger lines in order to show the same notes. If you had the preference, you'd probably want this one because we actually have less ledger lines on the bottom version than we do on the top version. Well, I'm using this to demonstrate a particular thing that I want you to grasp in this video, is that we notice that there is some resemblance between some of these, and particularly between these two notes. All right, these two notes are a mirror image of each other. All right, one is the first ledger line above the bass clef. This one is the first ledger line below the treble clef. And so, because they have that resemblance to each other in appearance, right, and they have a similar function, the first ledger line, we call this middle C. So middle C. Now, up to this point, we haven't talked much about letter names, and that's okay. We don't have to talk about letter names actually too much, except in certain cases. We call this middle C. And so what middle C will be is that point of intersection between the top staff and the bottom staff. When we put them together, this staff, the treble staff, and the bass staff, we have what's called the grand staff. Like all piano music is written in the grand staff. So you have a treble clef staff and a bass clef staff underneath, and they're joined together by a brace like that to show that these things travel together throughout the piece of music on the page. When we're singing hymns, we have a similar sort of thing, but usually in the hymns, we don't have the brace. But we'll refer to it by the same name. We'll still refer to it as the grand staff. So a grand staff is then when you have a treble clef staff and a bass clef staff that are joined, and their point of intersection is middle C. Now, in terms of that middle C, and this is something I didn't understand when I was a young music student, is it looks like there's space in between these notes. Like there's extra space in between them, and so there must be missing notes. And actually, they're not missing notes. These are the same pitch, right? The same note, if you like, right? And so When you have space in between the notes like that, the space is only there just for the convenience of, say, if you're reading a hymn, you look at the hymn and you say, oh, there's words there, right? So there's space between the staves in order to create space for the words and to create space for extra ledger lines if we in fact need them. All right, so going back to what we were saying about this melody, I'm saying that I'm singing this in tenor range. So tenor are the high men's voices. The low women's voices would be the altos. Is it possible that the altos could sing this? It's quite low, but they could actually sing that, right? And in fact, if you're looking at a hymn, you just turn to any hymn, right? You will find places where the altos have to sing quite low and the tenors have to sing quite high. And so that just because of the distribution of chords and the choices that the composer had to make, so they're actually sharing some of the same, not all, but some of the same range throughout. Again, just to review what we're talking about today, we have talked about the concept of ledger lines, which is a little scrap of staff which extends the staff above or below the given staff. We also talked about middle C as being that point of intersection between treble clef staff and bass clef staff. And then also shown that the treble clef staff and the bass clef staff, when they travel together on the page, that is called the grand staff. Thanks for watching.